Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today is the vocalist and multi instrumentalist of one of the truly legendary bands in progressive rock. Gentle Giant are about to release a reimagined version of their classic live record, Playing the Fool, which includes tracks left off of the original, and it now gives you more of a full show experience from that iconic tour. Here to talk about it, please welcome Derek Shulman. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, let's start with the record itself. So, the original version came out in 1977. There was a
Right.
35th anniversary version a little while back. But talk about what makes this version of Playing the Fool really the definitive one.
Well, there's several things actually, because the original album we only had room for a just about most of the show, but not all of the show. So there's several songs were left off, and on the vinyl itself, obviously there were. I don't think there were CDs at that time, um, and um, and basically it was mixed in a fairly quick fashion, to be honest with you. What makes this different, of course, is that we had someone called Dan Bordemark, who is a fan and an archivist, who has all the tapes, had all the tapes in his possession because he's been our archivist for many, many years. And he suggested to us, the band, that instead of just remixing it, why don't we mix the whole thing like a concert, like you're there
Mhm.
at a show, including the songs that we actually had to leave off, as well as Ray's amazing violin solo, which was always a highlight of the show and something that was both entertaining and incredibly musical. So we said, sure, why not? And he also decided, with us, our vetoing, that a couple of songs which were on the original album may have been better on another show. We recorded four shows in
Mhm.
Europe, in Munich, I think, Dusseldorf, Paris, and Brussels, and we took one or two of these shows, which were sorry, songs from a different version of the album, and he took the same song from another reel of tape, which is perhaps on the Paris show and not the Munich show, perhaps. Anyway, he remixed it, and he remixed it on a stereo level, just like it is. You would be at a concert today, and the 5.1 in Atmos, certainly, if you have that, the experience of being there, it really is like being at a Gentle Giant concert.
Mhm. And that was a pretty monumental tour for you guys. I mean, the band was really firing on all cylinders at this point. What are your memories of that European run?
Well, it was a very, I mean, I was, as you said, we were kind of at our height, I think, in a lot of ways, both popularity wise and playing wise. And I think that we were it was a fantastic tour. We were always very popular in Europe, even from the earliest days. And I think that period of time, 76, 77, we were playing really big venues and playing as a group, as tight as we could be. So my memories are fantastic about those shows. However, the show, the what's the recording of the show sometimes was sometimes a little awkward because even in the in this recording you'll hear now me saying I have to stop the show a little bit because we have to change tapes in in the mobile, and you'll hear laughing. So it's the memory of it at that tour was great because we were really on fire, I think, as a band and as popular as we could be. But again, as I said, there are things on the album which you could hear that you wouldn't hear before.
Yeah. And at that time in the late 70s, these big live records were all the rage. Every band was putting them out, and everyone was more successful than the next. Did Gentle Giant feel pressure from the record label to put out a live record, or was it just something you guys were ready to do at this point in your career?
No, I believe, no, I think it was the band's idea that we could give the audience basically something they wanted, because we had a lot of fans who would come up to us and say, "We love your records, but honestly, live, you're even better." So it's strange to say that, because we were different live. I mean, completely, and I think we were better live than on record. And so we decided, having just recorded interview, that instead of going out there and promoting that, let's put a live record out to give it some air, and then we will go on tour to promote interviews. So it was our idea, and I think it turned out very well. I hope anyway, at least.
Now, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Before Gentle Giant, you were more of a traditional rhythm and blues kind of band. There was no progressive rock at that time. So, what was it that ultimately influenced just the complexity and layers of sound that we came to hear in Gentle Giant?
Interesting. Well, yeah, myself and my brothers came from a very musical background. My father was a professional musician. He was a jazz musician, but he also loved classical music. So the house is always full of music in my family. And we always would play various instruments because they were always around the house. But yeah, as a band, my first group, Simon Keep Bringing the Big Sound, it was not traditional, but we were a band that most groups in England at that time started off as being, which it was influenced by American blues and R&B. I mean, most bands that
Yeah.
came into being, we'd listen to Radio Luxembourg, and we'd listen to American Forces music, because on the British radio you hear these crooners and and the stuff that was awful as far as the kids were concerned. And then we'd listen to that, and then we if you had a guitar, which I had one. I mean, my sister gave me my first guitar when I was 12 years old, and then you try and emulate what you heard on the radio. And you could play E, A, and B, and start to try to sing the same things that Jimmy Reed did, or Howlin' Wolf did, or even more in the Motown, Tamla Motown sound. And then the Beatles happened, and that changed everything. That was that was the that changed the musical, cultural, and historical world as far as England was concerned, and certainly I believe over here too. So we saw a band that came out of nowhere playing this great music, and had amazing hit songs. And myself and my brothers and my school friends started a new band called Cyber Dupree and the Big Sound, and we had a very big hit in 1967. It was a kind of psychedelic sounding song with mellotrons and all these other things. And we were a hit pop kind of pop band, but it became a kind of a millstone around our necks ultimately, because when we played to an audience in Europe, we did never come over to the US. People wanted to hear the pop hits, and it stymied our musical abilities, because we were getting better in various forms, both musically and ideas wise. So ultimately, we broke up that band because it was, even though we were making a very good living, it was very frustrating playing to an audience that expected the hits rather than what we wanted to do, which was progress musically.
Mhm. And as you began to evolve into Gentle Giant and come over here to the US, at that time in the early 70s, it was guitar bands that were everywhere. Zeppelin was huge, Black Sabbath, and you guys were famously put on a bill with Black Sabbath. Was there sort of a pressure from the record company to conform to that more, pop standard, or were they good with you guys experimenting and bringing in all of these other instruments that we weren't hearing in those traditional songs?
No, we were very lucky actually because we had a manager at the tail end of the first group. And when we discussed what we wanted to do to break up the band and start something brand new, he believed in our musicality, a guy called Jerry Braun, and he believed that we would start something new which would be good. And another factor which I probably didn't mention just earlier was we had a keyboard player who was in the band for a decent period of time who wanted to join the band, but also was instrumental in some respects as to listening to kind of new music out of the West Coast, actually. And his name was Reg Dwight. Um, and and we told him, me and my brother Ray became very friendly with him. We were on the road with him. He was in our band. And he said he heard bands like Spirit and Love coming from the West Coast, and we hadn't. So he introduced us to music which is coming out of the West Coast. Anyway, the bottom line was that we told him actually that we were going to start something new, and he said, "I'd like to talk to you about being part of that." Um, and we went to Watford, near to his house, and he played him. And Bernie was there as well, and played songs like Skyline Pigeon and stuff. And we went away from what went down back to where we were living in Portsmouth, and we thought, myself and Ray said, it's not quite the stuff we wanted. Thankfully for him, we turned him down for the job, and next year he was massive, and we were struggling to get gigs. Um, but he was instrumental in saying, in opening our eyes to different sounds, and we had we were lucky if we had a manager that said, okay, go ahead and do what you have to do, and basically it was an open page, and we found a fantastic keyboard in Kerry Minier, who just left the Royal Academy of Music with a degree in composition and percussion. We found Gary Green, who was just an incredible blues player. And we went through a couple of drummers, but eventually found John Weathers. But we found musicians who were complementing what we wanted to do. So we never had the pressure of from management or record companies to do something that we didn't want to do.
And as the band was growing, your brother Phil decided to leave after the Octopus record, which was kind of a big turning point for the band. Was there a thought of ending at that point when Phil left, or did you always know that, okay, it's, we're down a man, but we're continuing on?
Well, I mean, Phil was part of the Simon Dupree and the Big Sound, and Phil was part of the birth of Gentle and Giant, and up to Octopus, and Octopus was, I think, one of the high points of that period. And when he left, it was kind of left. Well, he was my brother and my raised brother, and so it kind of left a whole fraternally, if you like, even though sometimes me and Phil went at it like brothers do.
Yeah.
And so we thought, oh, this is going to be rough, because we spent 2 or 3 years with this whole new idea, but we decided, we put our heads down and said, okay. There was thought about, should we continue, but it was only a thought, and then we said, no, this is just, we come this far, and we have so many other things that we want to do, so we continued as a 5-piece, and I think it pared us down to focusing on what we did best. And I think that evolved into a golden period for the band.
Toward the end of the band's run, after Playing the Fool came out with Missing Piece and Giant for a Day, you guys began to change your sound a little bit, almost make it a little more accessible to mass audiences. Was that a natural progression of you as a songwriter, or was it more we need to change, try to gain some of that popularity, especially here in America?
Um, I think it was a little bit of both. I think that my brother Ray was probably more influenced by what was going on in the punk world, actually,
Mm.
and influenced myself and Carrie in looking away at what we did best and trying to sort of do something which is a little more commercial, which in retrospect was not a good idea because
Mm.
we weren't a commercial band. I
Mm.
mean, we tried, and some of the songs on Giant for a Day, they're nice, they're good, but it wasn't what the fans liked. And I think that again, in retrospect, you can't say we should have, could have, because I think we did what we did, and if it was a mistake, then you decide, okay, well that's not what we should have done. Let's move on to something we can do.
Mm.
So I think I think it was a harder period of time for us, and in that respect, and I think we were to a certain degree catering to what was happening in the marketplace. Bands of our ilk, who were able to turn their sound into songs that were on the radio, which were hit songs as opposed to hit albums, if you like.
Mm.
We
Well,
we, we weren't able to do that.
but that's where I was going to go in that the sound that you guys began to create on those two records, only a couple of years later, I mean, Gentle Giant breaks up in 1980 after that. But shortly after that, bands like Yes and Genesis and King Crimson sort of adopt what you guys were doing on Giant for a Day and Missing Piece. And that's when they find their huge success, in the early 80s. As that was happening, did you think, well, maybe we gave up a little too quickly on this?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. When you've had the run, and we finished our career with Civilian, which we recorded in California, and that was supposed to be a kind of a new turn that we would pare down some of the complexities, if you like, but still while keeping what Gentle Giant was about, and hoped that that may be the way that the band would become. Well, I mean, we're still popular, but not as big as the bands you had mentioned. But quite honestly, it backfired on us because we had a consultant working with us, and the radio stations in America, which were the most important marketing factors for a band, if you want to be a radio band, um, thought it was nepotistic. In fact, so effectively, we didn't have the support at radio. So we tried. I think it was a really good album, actually, Civilian, but it didn't do what we hoped it would do, and therefore we thought, okay, look, we've done one thing, we've done another. Let's not try to continue and go back to where we were because that's already been written. So we said let's just call it a day while we're on top and just leave the legacy as it is and move on from that part of our lives into another part of our lives.
And the success that a lot of those bands began to see in the 80s, I mean, have really propelled them for the next 40 years. And while Gentle Giant has been a huge influence on generations of prog bands after, you guys never reunited to get that big arena tour and take advantage of that influence. When you see kind of the longevity and success that your peers had far after that time, why did you guys never reunite and give it one more try, 10, 20, 30 years after that?
Well, it's something that we didn't want to be a tribute band of Gentle Giant. That would be an anathema to the band. I mean, we were always trying new things and new adventures and ventures as a band and personally. So that's something that would be kind of like, yeah, it just would claw in our throats if we became a self tribute band or a parody of ourselves.
Mm.
And honestly, I think some of the bands, you know, perhaps play music and are still out there and really are not playing anything that they've done over the last 20, 30 years. And that's something I still wanted. That was a history, that a period of history that should remain untouched and just left where it was, because you can't relive it and you can't rewrite it. So it was better to leave it as what it was, and not make it a parody of something else. So it was we had lots of offers in the 2000s, actually, to reunite and do this and do that. But honestly, it was something that was never on our radar. Quite honestly, we wouldn't do that. It would have been, we wouldn't be able to fit into our clothes anyway. You know, they,
Yeah.
so so that's part of it. But it's not. I'm joking, but it's not what we were about. We were about those 10 years of fantastic creativity, and what we got, if we went out there and tried to redo it again. That's not something. It would be not pleasant for us, and I think the memory of what we did before should remain intact.
Mhm. And that memory is captured perfectly on this new version of Playing the Fool, which is out everywhere on May 2nd. It sounds great. It's an amazing listen to bring back that period of time. And we've been spending some time here with Derek Shulman of Gentle Giant. Again, the record is Playing the Fool. It is now completely remastered, redone, reimagined, and it sounds amazing. Derek, thank you so much for taking some time to do this. It's been a pleasure getting to talk with you.
My pleasure too, man.
Thanks and best of luck with the record.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah.